On my way to work, I drive past a small pine plantation. Last year, the plantation was harvested, leaving a vast void in nature. On the roadside remained a few isolated trees, and without their forest, week after week, they would fall onto the road. Because you see, trees like these grow in community, and without the support of others, they simply don't survive. They rely on each other. Indeed, they talk to each other. Humans, like these trees, were made to be in community too. Whether that be families or friends aligned by principles, we're naturally relational. And yet, as a society, we have chosen another goal: independence. To be independent, to stand on one's own 2 feet. It's the goal of parents and schools and our cultural systems, but it's come at a cost. The apparent pinnacle of adulthood, to be able to do everything on your own. I ask the question, has our desire to be independent become the double-edged sword of our time? I'll be fine, when really I won't be. But I won't ask for help because of what you might think of me and my inability to attain independence. You see, I've grown up in a generation where I've been taught by my world that I need to stand up for myself. Don't air your dirty laundry. Don't rely on other people because you'll be a burden. Unfortunately, that's come at the expense of the whole. Because when I matter most, others matter less. This communal direction has led to what I believe is the biggest fracturing of society in generations, causing enormous flow-on effects for health and what it means to be a vibrant and connected community. Our fear of trusting other people and sharing in vulnerable ways comes from our desire to be independent and individual, and it's causing widespread loneliness and disconnection. Loneliness is the experience of life without others. But more than that, it's caused not by being alone, but by being without a definite needed relationship or set of relationships. It's the result when community falls apart. It's become a genuine public health issue and a warning sign for an unhealthy system. Left untended, loneliness can have some pretty serious consequences for both mental and physical health. Because social networks are as important as diet and exercise across our lifespans. Research into loneliness has confirmed those negative physical effects, which are equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and have impacts on all areas of our health. To put it bluntly, lives are shorter and provide less meaning where loneliness exists. So what about those definite needed relationships? Have a think about your week. How many people do you interact with, talk to, and rely upon? How many do you feel comfortable calling at 2 a.m. in crisis and rely on them for support? We've become averse to connecting with more than just a couple of people in a vulnerable way. And in our society here in Australia, we've still got this underlying cultural issue where sharing emotion and vulnerability are considered signs of weakness. And I see it constantly at the Community Support Centre. I was chatting with Ian the other day, a man who came in looking for food support. Now, Ian came right at the end of our food program, and so we'd already packed up, and when he saw that, he turned around and he walked away. His head and his shoulders dropped. When one of our team spotted him, she ran after him and said, "Hey mate, don't worry, come in again tomorrow and we'll take care of you." So the next day, in came Ian, and we sat down with him and we worked through his requirements, but more than that, we heard his story. And it was here, over a cup of coffee and a kind conversation, that a doorway into relationship opened. Because you see, the first thought going through Ian's mind that day wasn't, okay, where can I find some food now? It was the conversation in his mind which went something like, see, I can't even ask for help correctly. I can't even turn up on time. What are they going to think of me? He cared more about what we thought of him than the needs he was experiencing. And that's because we care what other people think of us. But mostly, we're seeing it wrong. He had the courage, not once, but twice, to seek support. How could we see him as anything other than an absolute champion? In my own life, if my wife and I didn't have others to rely on, we wouldn't have our daughter today. We spent over 7 years attempting to have a child through IVF, a journey that many go through. It's a roller coaster that's full of chaos. So personal is the journey that most try to keep the ups and the downs very private, as did we, because it moves really quickly and it's full of hope and so often failure. Thought to be too hard to bear, we keep the experience within just a very small network of people. On the one hand, we do that to maintain a sense of protection and control over our own story. And yet on the other, we understand that sharing vulnerable parts of our lives can create an incredible support system. So I wonder if we'd shared more, what that would have looked like for us. I'd like to share with you 2 things that I've seen be transformational, both in terms of well-being in community and personally. Number 1, trust more. When we feel somebody needs us, our bodies release the chemical oxytocin, increasing our level of trust for them. The more we interact with each other, the greater our level of trust. The more we do it, the more it's reciprocated. Our bodies are clearly wired for that connection. And yes, of course, there may be times we're burned or taken advantage of. But in my experience as an executive, a leader, and as a partner, where trust is higher, there are better outcomes in every category. In fact, when we share more of ourselves and seek to find out those things within others, we're more likable. You'll attract other people. Those who share in vulnerable ways, though, often believe they'll be perceived in a negative light, making it really difficult to do next time. The reality is the opposite. They're seen as powerful, strong, and courageous. Number 2, rely on others more often. Whether that be to change a car tyre, help getting a child picked up from school, or something a little bit more serious like Ian's story, when we reach out, that creates connection and improves community. Asking for help, while sometimes really difficult to do, unlocks real social returns. Whilst it's challenging, we often withhold asking others for assistance because we fear that they won't have time or it would be an inconvenience for them. And sometimes, like Ian, we will withhold asking others for assistance going through needless suffering. But again, studies have found that sharing and asking for assistance can create emotional closeness when we realise someone trusts us enough to share vulnerably with us. When someone trusts you enough to share vulnerably with you, a connection is created and you are changed. What we're talking about here is putting down the mirror and breaking down our own walls in order to realise the social, emotional, and health gains by simply not being too hard on ourselves nor assuming the worst in others. When we build trust by relying on others for assistance and sharing our joys and our lives with them, we create the foundations of a positive and well-connected society. The roots of our lives become intertwined, and we are less likely to collapse when we're feeling isolated or alone. Forests do the same. Researchers in Germany have confirmed after centuries of hypothesizing that trees communicate with each other to protect their communities, regardless of the threat, be it insects or parasites, drought or disease. They communicate through their immense root systems. Larger trees have been found to feed younger trees in the shade who have been unable to photosynthesize. One tree, upon experiencing a giraffe eating its leaves, emits a gas to warn other plants in the area of the threat and pushes tannins to its leaves to make them less desirable. They protect each other. And yet, if that tree were looking after itself alone, others may not survive. But by reaching out, they thrive in a harmonious ecosystem. We know that positive community environments can be life-changing for people. We also know that we are moving further away from a cohesive system where people rely on each other, having been convinced that independence is a better option. We also see that standing alone is the quickest way of falling over. We have the knowledge and the power to shift that outcome. Where we have support systems, less people fall. And in my world, I see fallen people every day. And yet, even fallen people can develop strong roots again with a forest around them. Thank you.